Right, I call the meeting to order. Good evening, everybody, for the Finance and General Purposes Committee meeting of the 12th of December. First item on the agenda, 1731, apologies for absence.
I've had apologies from Councillor Peel, he's not feeling very well.
Okay, do we accept apologies from
Yes.
Councillor Peel?
Yeah.
Those in favour? Yes, unanimous. 1731. Just noticed we've got
Yeah, no, I've seen that,
1731.
yeah.
Declaration of interests, to receive and consider any declarations of interest from members and officers under section 50 of the Local Government Act 2000, our Standing Order 35. This requirement applies only in respect of matters which are to be considered by the Council at this meeting. Item 3101, to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests. No. 3102, to declare any other interests. Oh, Councillor Chappell has noticed.
There is a grant application
Yes.
for the Wigan District Choral Society, which my wife is
I wondered.
a member,
Yes.
so I think I ought to declare that.
I thought that was one of her societies.
Yes, well, she was in the performance on Saturday.
Right. And that's the only other interest. Okay, 1732, representations from interested parties. Received nothing?
Nothing.
No, and there's no members of the public present. 1733, consideration of requests.
Nothing.
Nothing to consider. 1734, minutes of the previous meetings. Finance and General Purpose. 3401, proposition to approve and sign the minutes of the Finance and General Purpose and Personnel Committee meeting held on the 10th of October 2017 as an accurate record. Standing Order 10C. It's there in your pack.
I can't say anything, I wasn't there.
I think it's Lee and me, actually. If I don't second it, we've got a problem.
So I've got a proposer, Councillor Glenn, seconder, Councillor Chappell. Those in favour? So that bit as a no, Right, we move straight on to financial matters. 1735, item 3501 under financial matters is to review old debts and agree course of action. Over to the
Okay, well, I
Finance.
think on the pack that you sent over, which is four or five people.
Yeah, these are ones that they've been trying to get them to pay but can't get hold of them. They go back to the previous financial year, and
Okay.
so it's a case of whether we write them off. I mean, there's a few for this year as well, but it's...
So I've got the aged debtors list you sent over to me in November, and there are quite a few more on there than in this pack.
Yes, yeah, there are more, but they're this financial year. What I'm basically saying is the ones from the previous financial year,
Yes,
we should decide whether we, instead of keeping them on there, because,
okay. But I think this brings up a wider point that we've got to have some sort of procedures where, we've got a path for our staff to follow, that after the end of 30 days, end of month, let's assume that's what we're giving them in terms, end of 30 days, end of month, I don't know, but after their terms run out, then we send a reminder or two, and then it's interest, and then a penalty charge, or an administration charge. And when it gets to the point of court action after a couple of months, we shouldn't leave it too long. Then we get hit them with court fees or other fees, collection fees, £150 or something. I can show you what I used to do for my company.
yeah.
And it's, we got the money in on time, not always, but it was pretty good.
you want to
I'm
come
not
in?
aware that we've actually, do we take people to court for that age in debts? I've
No.
no recollection of it.
Well, we should.
Yeah, we should perhaps look at it.
I think we should be a lot,
I think-
lot more procedure involved.
Yeah, I think possibly that's the last resort with, but what's happened with some of these, you know, the market, they've been left, and then obviously then they don't come anymore,
No, I know.
and then they've disappeared off the face of the earth, so it's very
I've also
difficult.
noticed that some of these we don't have an address for at all. I mean, not on the invoices anyway. So are we invoicing people without knowing, or giving them credit without knowing where they're from?
I don't know whether it's because they're handed to them when they're at the market,
Yeah.
because obviously somebody goes down there every day, walks around collecting money, because a lot like to pay by cash.
But whoever we give credit to, we should go through a procedure where we open a credit account in the usual way. It doesn't matter if they're market people. Otherwise, they should pay pro forma or on, you know, on receipt.
Okay, well, we can certainly look at that.
So I do think we need to come up with a proper policy for A, opening accounts and giving people credit, and B, collecting the debts. And I'm quite willing to work with Emma on that, as long as everybody's happy with you doing it.
Well, I'm very happy with that. I mean, the other thing I suppose you could look at is whether for bookings we actually take a much larger deposit
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
in the first instance. For those who are actually doing it on a regular basis, they won't be asked for a deposit each time, unless of course they default. But at least that way, for people who turn up as a one-off, disappear and we've lost them forever, at least if we've got a decent deposit out of it, at least
Yeah.
that's something. But I think somebody needs to look at this whole area, and if Malcolm is suggesting that he will, then I'm very grateful to him.
Going to the subject of deposits, I've got a feeling that people get their deposit back at a very early stage, and so I'm wondering with these whether
I don't think market, we
deposits-
only give, it's only people that use QVH that pay deposits.
Yeah, well, and so there is one or two here that...
And they literally, once they've paid their bill and the room has been checked and there's no problems, they get their deposit back.
So when they've used the hall, the room is checked. That would
Yeah.
be the first thing.
That is always checked, because we've
Yeah.
recently had one where we haven't paid the deposit back because the door was broken in
Yeah.
the gentleman's
Yeah.
toilet.
It sounds to me as if we are tidying up.
Mm.
We need
Yeah.
a formal procedure. You should be able to go, you should, sorry, I'm interrupting, but you should be able to go on handle.gov.uk and look at the terms and conditions on which we trade under. And so, as far as I can see, if we're giving anybody pro forma, anybody credit, we should take some action to make sure they're worthy of that credit, which means going through their, getting references or whatever we have to do to satisfy ourselves that they're going to pay the bill. If not, they have to pay up front.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like anybody else, that's what everybody in business would do. We should do the same.
Yeah, well, I mean, anybody that, like, let's say anybody that's new that wants to use a market, then we can say, right, you know, first
Yeah.
month you pay up front or something,
Yeah.
or the
Yeah, I
first
think so.
couple of weeks you pay up front, and then
Yeah.
then we see how good they are, you know, and how reliable they
If we
are.
want to sweeten the bill instead of people hiring a hall, I don't know, on some of these people we've got here, whether we're paying 30 days or 30 days end of month. If they want to pay quickly, we can give them prompt payment discount, if it helps.
Yeah,
Yes, possibly hold 1 month as a deposit, which will then be held, and they'll then pay on a weekly or monthly basis to
yeah.
us, and then at the time when they leave, they get the deposit back.
yeah.
Can I suggest that Emma and I look at it and then come back to a future finance meeting with
Yes,
Yeah.
the terms and conditions?
everybody happy with
No,
that?
that's-
But we need to discuss what we're going to do with these debts, presumably, whether we're going to write them off now.
Well, it's just that, I mean, it's up to the council to write them off. It's not up to anybody else, it's up to you to decide, but obviously there has been a lot of time spent trying to chase these people, trying to find them. It's how long you know.
Well, this person, the Katie Weeks, for example, she disappeared, has she?
The youth club's completely disbanded, and then this person's no longer around.
And the other thing is, when we look at the size of most of these, they're commercially irrecoverable.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And that's the other thing. If you're going to have relatively small letting costs,
Yeah.
Which they mostly are.
you've got to start thinking in terms of having some money up front, because
Yeah.
otherwise this is what happens occasionally.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've got a feeling that the youth club have had grants off us.
They have in the past, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's absolutely appalling that they've not paid their rent.
Didn't we give them, in 2016, I think we gave them about £6,000,
Quite a lot,
didn't we?
yeah, lots of
Because
money.
in actual fact, in this financial year, you put aside a further £6,000 for them.
Sorry.
In this financial year, you put aside a £6,000,
Yeah.
but the whole thing's just, you know, it's
And
just
they've
Which they
not
folded.
even paid, so where's the money gone?
They didn't get it. They haven't had it this year, that many.
Yeah, but the previous money they've had. Yeah.
I think what Val's saying is, where's the money in their account gone?
Yes, I think it's
I don't
probably
know.
quite serious.
Yes.
They needed it to pay wages, they said, for the people who supervised. I think that was the basis on which they came to us for a grant. But if they didn't fulfil the whole year, then they shouldn't have paid the wages for the whole year. Therefore, somebody has pocketed that money.
But an ex-councillor, that ginger one, what's her name?
Councillor Murphy.
Murphy, she
yes.
lives just outside the door. She was the responsible person for that youth club.
Have we got an address for this person, Katie Weeks, apart from the youth centre that does no longer exist?
I think there must be some contact details because they have tried to contact us. So, but I don't know.
Yeah.
See, I mean, she obviously is probably just the one of the person's name that we were given. I mean, it's not necessarily her business as
So
such.
ex-councillor Murphy hasn't come back to us at any point and said that it's ceasing, has she? Sad that.
So we're
It's
running
supposed to be on the positive side. If we budgeted £6,000 as a grant and haven't paid it,
That we've got, yeah.
that means the £6,000 in the kitty that we
Yeah.
might not have otherwise had.
Yeah, we can, yeah. You're not hinting at that for what comes up next, are you, Councillor Chappell? We might look favourably on the next item. 3502, to consider the grant
Are
request.
we doing anything with?
Yes,
Sorry.
what are we doing with this?
Yeah. Are we writing them off?
Well, green cookery,
Small amounts, we're going to have to, I think.
I think we're going to have to, but as a matter of principle, we should not be known as an easy target.
Oh no.
So we should go after people, whatever size of the debt is, to a point. This Greek cookery class blue, I mean, have we got a home address of him?
Well, we have contact details
I
because
see the notes on there. I mean, he's brazen enough to come into the hub and promise payment and still
Yeah.
doesn't do it.
Well, we just write him a letter saying unless he pays,
I think he's
we're
had
going
all this, hasn't he?
it's had all of
Yeah,
this,
that's
yeah.
why don't we just give it to a debt collector?
Because then you're paying a debt collector to collect.
Well, this is
Yeah,
what
you'll be,
Yeah.
I mean, okay,
Councillor Chuckle's point is.
You have to weigh up whether it's you're
Cost of
you're throwing more
There's
money,
people like this.
but you're throwing. I
Oh,
know
I
we're
understand.
losing
Yeah.
But what
public
is-
money,
yeah.
but you're actually then throwing public money.
well, I
Yeah,
suppose
yeah,
there
I
are-
understand all that.
there are some debt collectors who will, of course, simply do it for taking a percentage of whatever they recover.
Not to worry, it is
So I mean,
a
it may be worth engaging somebody as long as we don't spend our money. After all, if we didn't recover a penny piece, we're no worse off than we are now.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So it
Yeah.
might be worth exploring that. And
That
whether
would be
these
worth
people would
exploring,
be interested in it,
definitely.
I don't know. But
Well, I think it's an ideal case of where we should have charged him up front, for 30 quid bill or whatever it is.
I don't think going through the small claims court is very successful with these things either, from the small amount of experience I've had of it.
I'd like to say, should we write them off, but put in place.
Put in
much
place
firmer
procedures, yeah.
conditions of booking.
Yeah, if we can find somebody, a debt collector, who will operate on a commission basis, on success, then it would be worth trying to find one of those. If
We can always put them on a sort of cold case basis,
Yes.
like they do on the telly programmes.
yes,
The police.
Well, I think
Yeah.
I think perhaps we should write them off this time and then we'll put proper procedures in place.
Yeah.
And not have to think about it again. It's not very much money, but from now on, we'll be a bit firmer.
are we all happy on that? Those in favour? Yes, that's unanimous.
Can I ask one other thing, please?
Yep.
we owed a lot of money by North Hampshire Highways, North Hampshire County, yeah, to about £3,000 or something.
Yeah, the invoice has gone in. That is money that we are owed for grass cutting,
Okay. and
cutting
how,
our birches.
how quickly should they be paying? Like everybody else?
In normal, well, I've always known that you put your invoice in about this time and you get it before March. That's, I don't know whether it's exactly the same here, but when I've previously dealt with county council, that's how they do it.
I don't really understand why the county council should get any different terms to everybody else. Why they shouldn't be paying 30 days end of month like everybody else does. If we owe them money, how much time would they give us? I'm not having a go at you, just asking a question.
Well, I don't know. I mean, probably they only give 30 days and they send a few letters.
Yeah.
But,
Hate to mention the word, but they outsource this function.
Right.
yes, they do, yes.
Cambridgeshire County Council. And they certainly pay my expenses very quickly.
Well, I think that we could tighten up with them as well.
The invoice has only just gone in though, so,
Yeah. So
Okay.
they may pay.
yeah.
So why is it showing us over?
Well, I think, I
Over
have a
120 days.
feeling actually that is last year's as well that we're chasing for.
Right.
Ah,
I will double check that, but I know Paul and I had a conversation that they hadn't
Well,
paid,
I think when we review
and
this,
that has been chased.
when we review this, we'll review that as well, and then maybe we can tighten up that as well. So,
Yeah.
statutory body, isn't it?
yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'll leave it there now.
I do think with the 10 point whatever million
I know.
it is they're in debt, they're going to be really worried by
Yeah, I was going to
£3,000
say it's falling on deaf ears at the minute. I would imagine.
outstanding over 100 days to us is, yeah. Okay.
There's no reason why we should give up on it.
No, it isn't. Absolutely not. Item 3502, to consider the grant request from Almberland District Choral Society. Anybody got any?
We give them money every year, I take it, don't we? Is that
I think
correct?
we tended to give them it in most years.
Most
And
years.
there was a concert in St Peter's on Saturday, and Amberley Town Council was on their literature as a sponsor of the event. So we did get
Now we need the publicity.
Yeah.
it's not so much the publicity, it's the goodwill, isn't it?
Personally, I'm quite happy to see it go through, but, because I've done it before and it's a good thing to do, but we have to be very careful with the money we're giving away at the moment, considering what's looming on the horizon.
Exactly. Yeah, I think this year we might end up having to rethink our budgets in their entirety when we get to it, because I think there's going to be such a massive change with what might be coming to us from county, and that may have a massive, might make us have to rethink before we increase massively precept to the public. We might have to look very hard at all the services we provide, and whether or not we need to tighten up in certain areas. Councillor Chesser.
Since we made the grant funding July, October and January, which is this one for?
That is,
Which round of grant making is it
I
for?
think
Since
that's one
I've
of the
been
reasons we
here-
want to review the policy.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, since I've been here, when I started they were sort of coming in ad hoc, 'cause obviously you were sort of having different sorts of meetings. So obviously now I've brought this policy in for us to
Right.
review,
Yeah.
with the view as to we continue doing it that way, or, you know, do it as it has been, which is sort of ad hoc when they come in.
Okay.
Right. Do we have any more comments on this, or do we have a proposer?
How much are we?
£500.
500.
500.
how much we got left in the grant budget?
We've spent, out of a £10,000 budget, we've spent about 1,900 in community sport and about 1,500 in, what's the other one? Arts.
So actually, that
So-
suggests that over half is still left.
So there is still money there.
A lot of this would have been presumably for the, would wasn't that been for the youth club? Which is
No,
not-
that's
It's an
separate.
entirely separate budget.
Yeah.
That's a separate budget for that
Okay,
one.
fine.
One or two grants are sort of named and they're separate from the 10,000 to the general fund. But some of these, even though they come up every year, they're not shown as specific funds. Again, part of the policy might be that things like this that call upon us every year and other services that we support like chat, we really ought to put a sum aside for them every year when we've sorted out how much it ought to be, which I know Estates is looking at.
In line with what you're saying, exactly that. The last thing they say here is this is our annual grant renewal request. I don't think we should be seeing any request like this as an annual
No.
grant.
No,
And I
not,
think that should be made clear to them.
yeah. It's not a given
It's
that
not a
they
given
apply
that
every
they
year
don't
and,
have it, it should be a
Absolutely.
request when, yeah.
having said that, are we in favour of paying it this time? Councillor Glenn is proposing, Councillor Chester seconding, those in favour. It's
Just
unanimous.
tell the wife then. Right, it's not an annual grant.
Where did you see that? Because it doesn't seem to be in the covering letter. It might be somewhere else. Was it in
It is written there, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it is there. On one sheet, all by itself.
3503,
Additional information.
I'll make sure she hasn't.
to consider the grant request from Prince William School PTA.
That, you've got that in your pack. They asked us for a letter of support for some lottery funding that they were applying for, but they didn't get that. And that was for a variety of different things, but they're going to try and raise funds. But they've got this issue with this laser that's broken. I think, did you all get a copy of the photo
That
of
was a
it?
new one, it's replacing a program.
And so they're asking if they can have a grant.
They have two, one's on its last legs and the other one's broken.
I do have more difficulty with this.
I do,
Because
statutory.
frankly, this
funding.
ought to be being paid for by education out of the county budget. And it's the thin end of the wedge. If we start supporting things like this, however worthy it is, where's it going to stop?
Yes,
Before we know
usually
it,
one of our
all of the textbooks for a particular year,
Yeah.
could we perhaps purchase those, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Had it been, I don't know, had it been some sort of cultural thing or an exchange with another school or an arts performance or a sporting thing, I wouldn't have had any hesitation. But I do worry about this one.
It was only about 2-3 months ago at the GMS meeting. I think it was the one just before our meeting, so it would have been October Trade Association meeting. They were asking there if the traders would each sponsor an award for their presentations, school presentations on Prize Day. You know, they were trying to get the town traders to sponsor them, and quite a lot of the traders did agree to sponsor a prize for something or other at Speech Day, prize giving day. So they are, I think they're after anyone and everyone. I think they're in the same situation. It's another county that is suffering county's terrible financial shortage at the moment. But what's the general consensus on whether we support this?
Well, I think David's point is very.
I think we should be writing to Heather Smith, and we should be writing to Tom Purse-Club and saying this is something the state should be providing,
Yeah.
and they shouldn't be forced to come cap in hand to an organisation like the Town Council.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
And
agree.
then send them a
Absolutely.
copy of the letters that we've sent.
okay.
That's a proposition from Councillor Chapel. Have you got that, Clark?
I'll second.
Seconded Councillor Chester. Those in favour? Okay. 3504, to consider a request from resident regarding a possible grant for music workshops.
Well, this seems to me to be a grant for paying himself.
Yes, this is what I struggled with when he came to see
Yes.
me, and I tried to explain that it wouldn't be something that we would be looking to give a grant at. So anyway, he couldn't understand that, went away, and then came up with another company. Why don't we go through another? And I just thought, well, this is, anyway, I thought, well, I'll bring it along, but that's why I got the policy out, was looking through to see if there's any way where we've ever paid a business. I mean, basically, Abbott House have said they would like to have him come in with his instruments. They haven't got the money to pay for it. So he's coming along here to get the money to pay for it,
Right.
so that he can perform.
Well, I think Abbott House ought to be putting in the application for.
They won't.
Well, in that case, I don't think we can do it.
Correct.
But yeah, this is the conversation now. He's been to see me twice.
Yes, and I read your thing, yeah.
Yeah.
He knows perfectly well, he's lived here forever,
Mm.
and has had, you know, the other people who have.
It's a shame in a sense, because if Abbott House had come and said, we would like to put on some stuff for our residents,
Yes.
could you provide us with a grant so we could do things? I suspect we might have felt
Absolutely.
inclined
They've said that
to
they
go
won't
with it.
fill out an application form because they don't want to submit any of their accounting information.
Oh, tough then.
Well, they can't have it both ways.
Mm.
No. Okay. So there's a proposal to deny it.
So the proposition is to turn it down from Councillor Glenn.
Yeah.
Do I have a seconder? And those in favour? So that one is turned down as
Sorry,
well.
who was the seconder? Was that?
Myself.
No.
We move on to item 3505 to review grant policy.
Partly there's a lot in it that refers to the Operations Management Committee.
Well, I was absolutely staggered. It's got Operations Management Committee, it's got the Finance Committee, which was the forerunner of the Ops Management, and it's got F&GP, all in the same document.
And the original one that's actually on the website has actually got Courthouse Mill Road in it. So,
Yes.
so I thought I perhaps ought to bring it along.
Yeah.
And at least those bits get changed. And obviously, you know, do we go back to just having grants 3 times a year?
I don't see any particular reason why we need to. If we simply say that applications for grants will be considered by this committee only meets on a certain number of occasions per year. The dates are published in advance, so there's no real difficulty for anybody in doing that, and then it's not quite such a hostage to fortune as mentioning particular months during which we will do it.
But we couldn't. What's wrong with mentioning it months? I mean, my point being, if we have it set months 3 times a year, as it were, people will hopefully put them in around about that time. So you
Yeah.
can then compare one request with another. Because otherwise you could get a whole year when you don't give much out, and then suddenly get a fairly poor grant for the end of the year,
Yeah.
where you mightn't have given the money. And that's one of my thoughts.
How many times does F&GP meet then? Is it 5? Including a joint meeting with...
It's been a little bit different this year because
Yeah.
I think we've met, but then we've also had combined with personnel.
Yeah, we always have...
Yeah.
Structurally, we're supposed to have one
I think there are about 3 or 4 personnel a year in the original calendar. 1 month, August, we shouldn't have anything because it's our holiday month.
Yes, we did have that off, yeah.
And that leaves, if that's 4 or 5, that leaves 7 or 8 for finance. So we're meeting about 8 times a year. One of those is a combined meeting with personnel. So that means they're not going any longer than a couple of months before one comes along. So, do we want to leave it as simply as to be considered at all finance and general purposes committees, or do we need to make it, amend that to be just at certain times of year?
I'm happy to do it as they come along.
I think that's my preference. I can see why Councillor Chester says that, but I just think it's somewhat easier to have a rolling programme. That way, an organisation might not realise
Yeah.
that there's going to be a need to come along for a grant request, but can still get it in, and it's likely to be considered within a relatively short time of the request. Otherwise, if the timings go all wrong, it could be difficult.
Yeah, if they put one in a week after it had the October meeting, they'd have to wait until January, I suppose. But then I suppose if you get one coming at the beginning of the year, like say we do it on an ad hoc basis, you'd get one for, I don't know, £1,500. Like you say, you might think, oh, well, this is the beginning of the year, okay, I've got all this money. You might give it, but then throughout the rest of the year, you might get all sorts, and you think, well, I wish I hadn't.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
It is. Yeah.
Can I just ask another question?
Yeah.
Because we've got those grants which are part of, if you like, our that we're re-looking at, reconsidering,
Yes.
chat and so forth, museum, etc.
Yeah.
Are they still subject to the same rules as here in terms of when the grants are given, or should we be doing that in, the beginning of the financial year or something? Because chat's obviously still waiting to know what's happening to them, and they're trying to do their budget for the year.
I think probably what we need to do with preschool, chat, the museum, and those three in particular are to help them pay their rent to us. They probably need to be a specific item on the budget rather than in this general £10,000 figure.
One of the advantages of lumping it all together is that we would then be able to announce that we have a grants budget of £20,000 or whatever it is, but actually we're not spending a penny piece more than we are currently, because we're selling some of these things off in different lines. And after all, they are all grants. And in fact, there's the Scouts and Guides that kind of fit into all of this as well.
Well, I think under the heading of grants, we could lump all those items together, but not as one sum, so that the total for grants as a subheading on the budget could be 25,000, but when you look at it, what we're actually giving the museum is 1,700 and whatever for their rent, and the preschool is whatever we're offering them, and the same with chat is it's been 1,200, but we're thinking that probably that's extortionate for their rent. They only want it to pay their rent, so it's only to pay us back. So we're thinking of reducing that to about 600, which is more realistic for the size of the tiny rooms they've got. So those items going in under that collective sum would give you exactly what you want, Councillor Chappell. It would indicate to the town that we are, as we always have done, giving a huge amount of money back to the town in support in various ways, charitable support, but it would still ring fence this 10,000 for the non-regular ones, as it were, the odds and end ones that should crop up occasionally. And if anything is a regular one, then it needs to go in as a specific item into the budget. What's everybody's thoughts on that? Do you have a thought on that, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, I think, because like you say, they put their grant in chat, didn't they, about June time, about, is it 1,500?
1,200.
1,200.
It was £1,000 rent plus VAT on it. So
Right, okay.
they wanted £1,200.
So that's the rent.
Yeah.
So we charge them rent, they pay it, and we give it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
seems,
if we only charged them 600
yeah,
and gave them a grant for 600, there'd be another 400 available, or 700, 600 available for somebody else to have as a grant.
yeah.
So we need to look at these things, and that's going through estates at the moment to review the policy on estates on some of these rents that we're charging. What do you think about, Councillor Chappell's idea that we have this section called grants within the budgets?
Within that, yeah. But then that would be, then you'll have annual grants that you give to chat.
Yeah.
And whoever.
Yes, you've got annual
Yeah.
grants and then you've got the
Yeah,
one-off
yeah.
occasional grants.
And we reserve the right at any time to say we won't give one this year if there was a reason that the organisation disbanded or whatever, or didn't need it, their funds were sufficient, they didn't need it, we could say you won't get one this year, but it could still be an item in the budget. We would look at it the following year and say they now do need it, their funds are such that they now need it.
Yeah, or you could say you're only getting 50% this year because you obviously got funds from elsewhere.
Exactly.
It's how we show it
So-
accounting-wise, isn't
Yeah,
it?
but it would then, Councillor Chappell was absolutely right, we give a lot more money than this 10,000
Shows, yeah.
to charities and deserving causes in the town, and yet it doesn't show because it's hidden in other budget heads. So if we were to pull these items out into one budget head under grants, if that's possible, and I haven't looked at what the
We could
implications
call
of
them
that are.
support grants or something, have a heading for, A and B kind of grants, support grants and
Yeah.
something
Is
else.
everybody happy with that approach?
Well, I'd like us to look at. I'd like us to look at the feasibility of doing that.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
just seems to me that it's ultimately going to be more helpful to parishioners who see more readily
Yes,
Yeah,
just what we are doing.
yes,
and actually, in a funny way, it'll have more meaning to the people who actually do get the regular support grants too,
Yeah.
because
yes.
they'll see that there's a whole lot of other people that are eligible for grants.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can perhaps tell people or show on a slide at the town meeting, because I think this next year there's going to be a lot of questions about increase in precept and value for money and what do we do for the money, and I think that is one thing that will help us to show where we are putting money back into the community.
Particularly as a lot of people think we don't do enough because they don't know.
Yeah.
Any more on the grant policy?
Well, one of the interesting things is that the grant policy tends to be strong on procedure and slightly lacking in a sense on policy. Because things like the discussion we've just had about the grant application from the PTA at the school, where we said, actually we think this ought not to be being funded in this way, is in a sense part of our kind of unofficial, unwritten policy. Now the question is whether you start codifying it and putting it in there, or whether you keep it as a rather more loose arrangement, because it could be that thinking will change. This council has taken a view tonight, but it's not to say that in 2 years' time a council might not take a radically different view.
Can I just ask the clerk, because there's a bit in about you having at the bottom, will examine applications, empowered to request any additional information, and we've heard that the people at Abbott House don't actually want to disclose anything at all, much, maybe some, but not enough to get a grant.
Yeah,
There's the little group that I've visited in the library. It's a group got together by the practice originally for people with profound depression, and they have an arts and craft small group, And I suggested, and it was actually Heather Smith who first got me to go and meet these people. And they of course self-fund, but they're people who are pretty much too depressed to work even.
Right.
And they produce some very impressive stuff. It's done, you know, it's not a sitting around chatting group, they really do get down and do some fantastic artwork. But they weren't considered by whoever saw their representative as being eligible enough to apply, because they didn't have complex enough accounts. They have a sort of probably a double entry bookkeeping type accounting, because there's only about 9 or 10 of them. Is there a way we could consider those kind of things as well? Because they're only looking for, say, 200 quid or something.
Yeah.
Well, that's where your policy comes in.
It is,
because
that's why-
obviously you have all these criteria that
Yeah.
they have to and really they sort of have to meet that for you to then. you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. But I'm wondering if we could have something.
So it's like, you know, ideally they would need to have a bank account that we would then pay them.
Which bank would they be banking?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but do you know what I mean? They would. We wouldn't be able to just give.
Yeah. Because there isn't anywhere
We
to
wouldn't be
take
able to just give one person the money. It makes it.
I mean, it would have to be, they have to have a committee and
Yeah, it'd have to go through something like
nominated
that.
responsible people. I'm not saying that we give, rather like the previous request that we've had, to pay one person
Yeah.
some money. Absolutely, I think we would have to have in the policy that they would have to have a
Yeah.
structure.
But I think, I mean,
we
if
wouldn't
the-
be paying one
yeah.
person, but I'm wondering if we could.
I mean,
Do they do anything like display their produce, the stuff that they...
Yeah, they do. They have every year they have open days with the stuff there to see.
I'm wondering if through marketing, especially this girl that we got helping out in the office now, whether that's something we promote. Because we've said through the marketing budget, what we need to do is help people to help themselves. And it might be that with a little bit of promotion and advertising that they wouldn't be capable of doing probably, we could help them in that way to promote an event where they charge an entry fee of £1 a head or whatever and raise enough money to keep themselves going.
They've got to be very careful because they are very depressed.
so you don't want to
Yeah.
be putting any pressure
No.
on them.
That would be pressure.
It would, yeah.
Well, I mean, do you think have they got somebody that would fill out a
I've got a
form?
contact. I mean, I've got 2 contacts.
Yeah.
So I could go back to them now
Yeah.
because we failed the first time round.
The people who organise them would be able to...
Oh,
Who
Who did they apply to before?
Yeah,
They did
Yeah.
have a proper setup.
yeah.
People-
So those are the people that would deal with, the marketing would... well, any event they
go
put
back
on
and
would...
talk to them.
Yeah, yeah. Any event would be through those kind of
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
without putting pressure on the...
Yeah. I mean, as I say, that's when Heather got me to go and meet with them and find out what they do.
Yeah.
But it's just that there didn't seem anything, we didn't have anything small enough, if you like, in the way that we...
For them, for like little
for
one-offs.
small groups to apply.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I gather somebody's setting up, for instance, another scout group in our...
Yeah, they are. They had a...
Yeah, they
They
store
may
at
be
the
coming along
Saturday
saying,
market,
can we have a
Christmas
grant
market.
to get going? Could you pop something in it, do you think?
In what?
Are we rewriting this, or are we
Um,
rethinking
Into the policy to...
the policy?
To say,
Or have we got enough in it that would encompass that, the small group kind of?
yeah, I mean, I think if they can fill out the application form, and if they've got any sort of form of proof of any sort
You
of
think the
accounting,
application, yeah.
yeah,
I
then
think-
that's enough.
Okay.
Because it's quite a simple form, really. It's not. It's just all you really need is to fill that form in. What you're raising funds for, what.
They're not raising funds except for themselves. They're not a fundraising group in the
No,
sense
but raising,
of
yeah, raising
raising money to give to another big charity,
No.
because that's against the law anyway.
But they need to find the funds to
But
pay
to be
for their
self-funding.
materials and things.
Yeah, for materials
Yeah.
and things.
I mean,
I'll go back to them, see what we can sort out.
we don't have anything in the policy that says we will only pay a certain amount. So like, if they want a grant for £2,000 for something, we will only only ever pay up to 50% of whatever they're applying for. I know that goes into some people's policies.
Well, this is the advantage in the sense of having a
Sorry.
procedure. Well, this is the advantage of having a procedure rather than a policy. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, we could spend hours debating the fine
Sure.
points of
Yeah,
that. Do we put limitations on it? Do we have variable limitations in variable circumstances? And before you know it, you've built in such flexibility, you might as well have
So
done it in the
just-
first
yeah.
place.
yeah. I mean, at the moment, I think
Do you
if,
think it would cover that?
yeah, and I think if they filled
Okay.
out a form and if they've got some, I mean, I don't know how long they've been going,
Oh, I don't know, 4 or 5 years.
so they must have some form of,
Well, they've got the people in place
Yeah.
that have,
so
You
that's
know,
all they
nominated.
need, yeah.
I'm not saying there's a secretary as such, but somebody who does that kind of function and books the room and organise, you know.
Yeah,
And it's not a one person, it's not a one-man band, it's a group of people. Okay, I'll get them to submit a form,
Yeah.
and let's see how it
goes, yeah.
in
Yeah.
practice.
Do we have any more on the grant policy? No? Are we all?
do you want to leave in the months and go back to doing it 3 times a year, or do you want to do it ad hoc, do it?
I
We
propose
decide
that
that
we do
or-
it ad hoc, and we simply refer to, it will be considered at meetings of the Finance and General.
Okay,
I'm
so I'll
a
take that.
minority because I think 3 times a year.
Well, if that's a proposition from Councillor Chappell then,
Yeah.
that it's ad hoc, a seconder from Councillor Glenn, those in favour,
That's all right.
those against?
I know when I've been,
So I'll amend that then and change where it says,
Obviously, knock on bits as a result.
and then shall I bring it to the next full council meeting for it to just be approved?
they ought to.
Well, it could be appended to the minute of this meeting, and then
Oh.
people, we don't really want to end up going through another debate in full council.
No, we
No,
on the
don't.
same subject.
yeah.
They don't.
And we are entitled to make it, but
So I'll
if
just,
suddenly we discover that the other 6 councillors are fundamentally opposed to what we just did, Councillor Chesham may yet
There's a
have a
strong
way.
chance.
so I'll amend it and then just
Yeah.
circulate it to all of them.
I'm not going to resign over it.
That's all right.
Right, item 3506 to discuss the budget for 2018-19.
Well, I just added it on there because I'm just getting panicky that we're
Yeah.
not doing anything. So
Yeah.
I thought, you know, initial discussions,
Yeah.
start something.
I'm getting panicky that time is going by. Councillor Glenn and I have looked at quite a few chunks of this in isolation and sort of thought, especially the states and what have you, we've looked through areas of it and thought where, what numbers need to go in for the following year, and looking at which properties we need to spend some money on maintaining over the next year and on a rolling programme of the next 3 or 4 years. But I think to go far into it at the moment, it's leaving everything till last minute, unfortunately.
I know.
But we are rather stuck with that because of the situation with county. What was the date you were given at the
12th
12th.
February. So it doesn't give us a great deal more. I mean, if,
It doesn't even cover the meeting in February, does it? So
No.
we can't even wait till the full. We could finally agree the budget at the very latest at the full council, extraordinary full council meeting for neighbourhood plan. If provided we got in at the end of January, there is a spare week. We've got 5 Tuesdays in January, because you've got the 2nd, 9th, 16th and 23rd. That means the 30th is a spare,
Yeah. I think ideally they want to know
we could-
roughly
yeah,
by our normal date, which I think is something like the 19th or whatever. I
Right.
can't remember it exactly.
Yeah.
20 something.
Give them a draft.
So they want
On
to,
the
they
basis
sort
that
of
it's
want
yet
a
to be
rough
approved.
idea,
Yeah.
but then they actually want to know the final figure by the 12th.
yeah. But I think the rough idea in January even is going to be our usual around about 600k as usual, perhaps with 1 or 2% for inflation. But it's then going to be, it might be anything from 0 to, I don't know, 100 and odd thousand on top of that, because we don't know what it's going to cost. It's looking more and more like the library. If it comes, if we're asked to help it, it will be a community library. If Oundle can't find volunteers to run it, it might be that, or if they say that they prefer it to be run with staff and they're prepared to pay for that, it might be that we're providing for staffing, and it might well be that we've got to buy the building, because I think that's where county are looking for most of their income, most of their cost saving, I think, is in getting councils, town and parish councils, to purchase the buildings and take over the running costs of those buildings. I had, end of last week, I can't remember if I copied you in, an email that I got from somebody at county, completely out of the blue, but it shows me the figures spent on this library for about the last 4 or 5 years, and the figures vary tremendously. The figure we got was a figure of 19,000 as a one-off number, and you think, oh, that must be typical of other years, you know. The previous year to that was about 28,000 and something, down I think to about 2 years before that was down to about 13 or 14,000. So it seems as though there's vast variations. I mean, whether they had a new boiler for central heating or repaired a big hole in the roof or something, I don't know.
Some of that would be the withdrawal of the Sure Start money, I suggest.
This
2
is
years.
this is just purely building maintenance. This is purely maintenance money on the
They may have spent money doing it, and then, I don't know.
they may have. Oh yeah, they may have had
So you said
money
it
come in
there.
from those sources. Yeah, and spent it in that time. Yes. Yeah, I see where you're going. Yeah. But the figures seem to vary dramatically. We'd need to look at those, I think, closely. Look at the state of that building if we were to try and take it on, and look at a very, very long-term Public Works Loan Board loan. But the problem there is they are talking about a deal for 2 years, renewable for another 2 years, with the county, on the book service, as it were, on the what they call the infrastructure side of it, which they will maintain. I think that's the statutory duty. That's their legal obligation, I think, which is the bit I was trying to get Tom Perskell to tell me more about, you know, whether he knew that. We've only got a commitment for 2 years, definitely, possibly renewable for another 2, but even that can be cancelled at 6 months' notice on either side. So it could be that we offer to take this thing on behalf of the community. The community, I think, would love to have a library. There's little doubt about that. We could then end up taking on a long loan on a building, which, from accounts is not in the best of conditions, only to be 6 months in and county pull the rug from under us.
I've got a feeling there's probably a covenant on that building that it has to be a library in any event.
Could well
So
be.
we couldn't even then probably dispose of it for
No.
anything like what it
Yeah.
ought to.
No. The other thing,
I mean,
we'd also have to get rid of staff as well, if we had staff and
So
kept
why,
it on.
if they're stuck with that building, with that covenant, why don't we just leave them to it? Anyway, we shouldn't be discussing this at the moment, should we? We're not down the line with it. We need to have more information.
Do you know,
No.
when the
Well,
date, the meeting date when they make the decision on the libraries, is that something around about the 22nd of January? Or when they have a committee meeting?
13th of Jan is the end of the consultation period. 22nd of February
Oh, that's it, February.
is the
That's too late.
cabinet meeting. That's when they have the cabinet decision. But then, as someone pointed out at one of the meetings, the full NCC don't meet until after that. So it might well be March.
Yeah.
That doesn't give them long, only the next week, to have a meeting in February. So it might well be in March before their cabinet, their full council agrees on the cabinet decision and says, yes, we'll go with this, or decides to completely tear it up and make them go back to square one. So that's leaving things very late for us. Were you one of your coming, Councillor
It's
Chapman?
sort of slightly preempted by Councillor Chess's comment, but it does strike me that purely for the purposes of informing ourselves, we need to understand, as it were, what we'd be buying. So can they provide us with legal title documentation, for example, which I can look at rather than send off to the lawyer if you like. If they've got anything on its current state and condition, any reports, anything like that, they should disclose it. But what strikes me is that what they're looking for seems to me to be an extraordinarily one-sided deal. It's almost, heads we win, toes you lose. But one way of, in a sense, reversing that potentially might be to turn around and say to them, if you want us to take it on and run it as a library, then you sell it to us for £1, and you put a covenant on it much like this building. However, if you want us to pay a commercial price for it,
Yeah.
we have to be free to do whatever we want with that building in the future.
Yes.
Which could include obviously knocking it down and creating residential units, which might actually turn the council a profit. But I think we ought to make some inquiries about that, because again, we're just floundering around in the dark at the moment.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
It's extraordinarily difficult to have a meaningful budget when you don't know one of the potentially key items in
Yeah.
it.
Emma and I have tried the £1 nominal fee and saying, because I was concerned that at some stage, with all these local government reorganisations of the past, that at some stage they may take the whole lot back and decide that libraries is a county service. Tom Persclove was saying on Friday last week he didn't think they would. He thought it would be left with the parish level from here on in. But local government reorganisations have done all sorts of things. We went from having an Oundle urban district council that did everything, including set its own rates, to East Northampton District Council, and they took everything. Along comes then a small Oundle Town Council, which is at parish level and is, doing very lowly stuff. And now gradually it's going back the other way, where we may end up picking up quite a lot of the services again. So things are swinging backwards and forwards. Danny Moody, just to sort of fill you in, I've had long conversations with Danny, and he is equally confused about where it might end with parish level government. And I think he's getting the message from an awful lot of parish clerks around the county that they are worried that they are not geared up to running these kind of services, and they don't want to say we don't want them, but they are wondering how on earth they're going to support them. because clerks are good at legal and financial matters and running meetings. They're not geared up to mending potholes in
No,
roads and
and-
organising
yeah.
highways services. And you know, no disrespect
No,
intended,
that's not, because they don't.
because it's not their specialism. That's what Danny is saying. They're coming back and saying to him. So it might be that there's a huge rethink about how this all works. We might have to have some sort of pro rata share of someone like Sarah Barnwell, who handles highways, between many councils. It might be that Sarah Barnwell, you know, is nominally down for about an hour and a half a week or something with Oundle. But, you know, these things are all completely open. But for that reason, you know, getting back to budgets, which is where we were, we can't really drill into this too deeply, I don't think, at the moment.
No.
I think our normal annual budget will not be much different to what it's been in previous years, and that's about the 600,000 mark. But on top of that, it could be anything from 0 to 100, 120, 150,000. Quite realistically. And we can't get any closer than that until somebody gives us some numbers. Councillor Chapel.
Well, just in terms of moving it on, I think we should probably share that budget with the rest of the council, just so that they're looking at it and thinking about it, rather than it being done to them at some point in January. Because if anybody who does want to sit there and number crunch, it's a long exercise to go through each budget head and think it through. So the sooner that they've got something to look at, the better, even if we say, look, it's just very provisional at this stage, and it hasn't even really been thought about by this committee. Because normally, at this meeting, we are recommending to the full council
Yeah.
a complete budget.
Yeah,
with
but
a percent figure.
these are the budget figures we put out last year.
Yeah.
These are the 17-18. The new figures are not alongside here yet. I mean, Councillor Glenn and I have sat down, and as I say, we've mainly done estates and one or two other areas, and looked at it and said, it looks like we'll need the same sort of money in provision for the usual suspects. You know, the Occupation Road sports grounds, we put a sum of money in for each of them each year, and we put an amount in for lighting, which we can get a figure on of what that might increase, what electricity costs might rise by. There's figures out there we can obtain for that. District Council will give us guidelines on how much to increase that bit of the precept by. But beyond things like that, we can't get much further with it, really.
I don't suppose, even know what the portion that represents the police is yet. I wonder if they've got a deadline to get that into the council.
Well, yeah.
Part of our precept, isn't it?
Part of the precept we pay, not part of the precept that we
No, the
directly involved in
precept
setting.
that the people around will be
Yeah.
shelling out for.
But I do think council needs to have some figures to look at. So, you know,
Well, we can show them
this
last
year's
year.
well, I think
Yeah.
it's more than that. I think we've got to show them that budget, but I think we've got to show some sort of projection, even if it is provisional. But
Yeah.
because there are things that we thought about doing. To take
Yeah.
a silly example, you know, the
Maybe-
dedicated laptop for the planning committee to use as part of the planning presentations, which we said was going to be put into the budget. Whether it stays remains to be seen, but
Yeah.
those
So,
sort of things.
Think-
list of desirable spends.
Yeah, I think the desirables are likely to go out the window if these county spends come in, I think, because,
That might very well be.
and I think, as I said right at the beginning of this meeting, it might well be that this is a year when the town council budget is stood on its head because of what's happened to county.
Yeah.
And we perhaps things that we've done traditionally for many years, and we've done well for many years. I'm not saying we've done it uneconomically, but it might be something that we've got to trim back on in future, in order that we don't increase precept by too big a jump for the population. I don't know whether anybody's got a feel for what the population is prepared to accept as an increase to keep things like libraries. I've asked the question many times when people have talked to us about neighbourhood plan and about libraries and various things, but they're very reluctant to come out and say, I'm happy to pay another £1 a week, £50 a year.
One or two people have said to me that they would pay an extra month. You know, because we only pay 11 months.
Yeah.
They said we would pay a 12th month.
I suspect the people you've got saying that sort of thing are people probably better off and who are
Yeah,
actually
exactly.
taking an interest in
Yeah.
what's happening. And
Yeah.
most people are working with kids and too busy and
Yeah.
I agree.
other lives, and they probably don't even think about it.
An extra month is going to be about 8%. I don't think 8% is going to touch it.
Yeah, don't look at me.
I'm not.
What did they, Thrapston say? Did they
Did you say they were coming up with 30,000
30 or
extra?
40 cow? I'm trying to think what Linda said on Friday. I thought she said we've put in, it was either 30 or 40,000 for
And did you say Earthlingborough and Raunds are putting about 40,000?
something like that. They were about between the 9
you
and
see
12%.
yeah,
I think
that's-
Western are putting in quite a bit more.
Well, look, Rushden will be a medium library like us, I would think. Now,
No, I think, no, are the Preston large? I'm going to stay open regardless.
are they?
I think.
They're large, are they? They could well be. Could well be.
No.
Earthlingborough is a medium.
Yeah, Earthenborough's the same as us.
Yeah, because depending on whether or not they're going to cut the staffing and whether or not these medium libraries will run without staffing is going to vastly affect us. The staffing cost per annum there, for last year at least, we again haven't seen other years to compare whether that's typical or not, but last year was about 44,000, including on costs. And that is one person for 37 hours plus a couple of other part-timers doing much less hours, plus the on costs on that. So it's a question of whether we end up having to provide that and whether the town wants us to provide that. But 40,000 on a £400,000 precept, 395 something or other at the moment. So it's 10% there just to provide the staffing, over 10%.
Yeah, Earthenborough, they put theirs up by 16.5%, that's the 40,000.
16.
Thrapston have gone up by, allowed 30,000, and this is for devolved services, so for a range. Thrapston have done 30,000, that's 20%. Higham hadn't done it when...
How they, you don't know, I've got no idea how they arrived at those numbers. Well, they just put a finger in the air and
They've just decided to take...
have a contingency of that much money.
Yeah, whether that's the most that they thought they'll put it up, they won't put it up any more than that, and so I don't know. It's just a
Presumably
complete finger in the air
we could
job.
take a contingency of 100,000 if we wanted to. Or
Which for us would be a 25% increase in precept.
yes.
Now, whether the town will swallow it,
But the other thing is we could look at the budgets and see where we could trim out.
That's
well,
a
that's-
huge amount to trim though.
yeah, it is a huge amount of
Yeah.
trim.
You're talking shutting
Yeah.
the toilet, shutting heaven knows what.
Well, that's it. Yeah, whether we have the public toilets in St Osyth Lane, you know, are they worth what we spend on them? With the caretakers to look after them and the water and electric and everything else, do they give value for money to the public, or you know, do the public want to see them shut?
When they were passed down, so there was a threat of them being closed a few years ago. What did people say in the town then?
Well, I think the gist of it was that if Andover has pretensions to being a tourist town without any public toilets is a rather odd place.
Absolutely.
And you know, I would really regret them not being available.
Yeah.
And they
But
did an
you do get to the
exercise.
point of very, very hard choices. If you go back to the library, of course, one reason that you've got the levels of staffing that you've got currently is because you've got the opening hours that you've got currently. Now, of course, the other possibility is that you retain it,
Yeah.
but on significantly reduced opening hours, if that's as much as we can afford. And that has to be another
Yep.
way of possibly.
Well, that could cut your running costs on heating and lighting and stuff as well, because you wouldn't have the central heating on all the time if you weren't occupying it. I don't know what sort of responses we've had back from the questionnaire of what times do you use it.
Oh, everybody's put Monday to Saturday.
Yeah.
Evening opening, you know.
Yeah.
They want the
Yeah.
A few people have said if it's a case of, you know, having it and not having it, then reduced hours. But most people want it Monday to Saturday. A lot of people haven't. Not many have said Sunday. So because I think it does open Sunday, doesn't it?
It
And I
does
think
open.
yes. And I think the friends
of
have said it's not
Yeah.
worth opening
No.
on Sunday.
No,
But yeah,
not
most
two of them
people
said that.
have said Monday to Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah.
They might have to shut the hub, you know.
Well,
Let's
right.
face it.
No.
We might.
That's a possibility. And it might be that we have to look hard at the support we give in other directions, things like the museum. It might be a case of the museum having to do more to support itself if we're having a library. It's all these things will need to be discussed with everybody and see what their thoughts are. Now, unfortunately, we haven't got a town meeting to talk to them between now and then. The only thing we have got, and it might well come up at that, is this town meeting for the neighbourhood plan next month. And there might well be some questions on it there.
But then, by the time we get to that meeting, we should have some idea of what the options are for us to reduce services. Until we look at the budgets and see where we
New
get
Year,
through
we're getting that information, aren't we?
from the county.
From the county.
But we should be looking at the spending at the moment and then deciding where we can trim.
No, we won't know until they have this meeting on 22nd of February,
No February.
Yeah.
whether they're
And that's too late for us.
Yeah.
way too late, way too late.
Yeah.
We've got to have budgets in before then. And then the other thing is, you don't know, they've got what they call a transfer window. It sounds like football league, doesn't it? But they've got this transfer window. You may find, and I think they'll do small ones first, which means it might come to us late. Between 1st of May and 30th of September is the transfer window. You may find that you're one of the libraries in the first tranche and you'll have to run it for the whole year. You might find you won't get it until 30th of September. You only need half a year's funding,
Yeah.
because by the time county get round to it, they'll have paid for half a year anyway. So again, what figure do you put in? They might turn around completely and say, we'll do the medium ones first.
Although, see, Heather said to me, she said that at the moment the consultation is all about the smaller libraries. So if they decide that the medium libraries, there's a question with them, it'll have to go out to consultation again. So I don't know.
I thought the consultation gave three options, one of which was to close this library.
Yeah, but what
So
she's, yeah,
So why would they need to go to consultation again?
but that's what she said. And she said at the moment they're looking at option one being the preferred option, but that's not for definite. But we don't know whether that just means that Oundle is fine and it just carries on, or whether we may still have to put some money into it or not. I don't think they really know.
I think if we can get together, and it's very difficult because we've got a huge amount on, if we can get together sometime between now and full council, if we can try and put some numbers together, Councillor Glenn, myself and the clerk.
Yes, I agree.
You've got a couple of days off.
Yes.
We'll try and get together if we can, and try and put some numbers together. We might be trying to get in here on a Sunday afternoon or something to have a go by the looks of it, I think.
Well, you'll have to do that without me then.
Yeah, no, well, but present you some numbers on Monday morning
Yeah.
to go through with us.
I mean, I know what I can do is just look back, and I've had a bit of information come in about salaries going up. I think I forwarded that to you.
Yeah.
didn't I? See what I can find. Things like, I mean, I'm sure we won't get any information about the rates yet.
No.
Just so that we've got some idea.
Okay, so someone going to set a date for a meeting then when we go through it?
It's you and I, when are we available?
Well, you phone me and
Yeah, we'll get
I'll be
together.
available. It's
We'll get-
you're the one with the time constraints.
Yeah, I seem to be in meetings all the time.
But
these
yeah, I
days.
was going to say, I think I've booked you in on one today, the Trade Association. That's
Yeah.
next week now.
Right.
I'll have a look, see what I've booked.
Malcolm's in on that as well. Can you copy
Yes, I
Malcolm?
will do, yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't consider get any of the stuff from the Trade Association, does it? I don't know why.
They don't copy him into
Don't
their
No.
circulations either. But I forward him
I
into
don't
all
blame
of
them.
those.
Right, okay.
I think that's as much as we can say about budget, really. Time is pressing. We'll do what we can to get some numbers out for next week. 3507 to report on closure of NatWest Bank in Oundle and to discuss the impact this will have on the council.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought I would, bring it to your attention. I mean, obviously you know anyway, but so long as we continue with the post office, it may be that we can pay cash into the post office, because we daily pay cash into the bank at the minute. If we can't, then we've got, how we either got to travel to Corby, which means, and I mean, we're not going to be travelling to Corby every day. So then somebody's going to be going once, twice a week. That means they're carrying more money. It means you're probably going to have 2 people going. It's just really to know, to try and think what we can do.
We could open an account with the other ones, with Barclays, but then they may be gone too.
Well, I mean,
They're
that's,
open 3 days a week.
they're only open 3 days a week anyway.
Yeah. Are they
But-
open? They're not open Thursdays, are they? I mean, people like the market traders
Yeah.
who want to drop money in, and us wanting to pay the market rents in
I
on a
know.
Thursday, they're not open. Which means we've got more money hanging around here till Friday till we can
That
put
means
in.
that somebody sort of walked back from the market.
Yeah, with
so
all that money.
do we have 2 people? Because obviously somebody may be watching that
Yeah.
person
Oh,
walking
goodness.
around.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the moment you can pay money into the post office, so if that
Well,
continues.
their licence is until 2019,
Right, okay.
so that's like another year,
In there, right.
just to warn, that it's not a long-term solution.
Whether Barclays would decide that it's worth opening 5 days a week again, in the light of the closure of NatWest and
Yeah.
Norwich and Peterborough. I mean,
Well, they might. There was something on the news today about some other building societies have suddenly had a surprise change of policy because with N&P closing their branches all over the place, people have switched to these other little building societies and suddenly they're not in the problems they were in of branches not being sufficiently used, and they're now keeping some of them open.
well, in fact, in March, the Norwich and Peterborough has now become a Nottingham Building Society.
Right,
Come on, Nottingham.
Nottingham.
yeah.
So, watch this space, I suppose. But I guess the other thing is that we could actually, as a council, approach Barclays and say, look, NatWest is closing. We would want to consider moving here, but it would be far more convenient if you were open 5 days. Is there any possibility that in response to the closure of these things, thing to lose? I mean,
Well, at least point out there's a lot more business on a Thursday, potentially.
yeah, or consider altering your opening hours. If you still want to open only 3 days, consider being open on a market day.
A lot of market traders will want to put money in at intervals during the day rather than have it in their pocket or go home with it. They'll want to bank it to keep it safe. They won't want to ride around in the dark with a lot of money in their pockets, I'm sure. So I think it's certainly something that we need to consider. I've not heard back from the Mayor of Nailsworth yet. On the Councillor Chappell's looking puzzled, I'll explain. While we were holding the Christmas market, not last Saturday, Saturday before, Councillor Chesser and I went round and we were thanking all the traders for coming and just generally chatting, you know, have you enjoyed it, has it been successful? And as we were going round, a fella came up and said, are you the mayor? And he said, I'm the mayor of Nailsworth, and I think we're similar sized towns and a lot of things in common. And we had a long chat, didn't we, about things. They've lost all their banks, which is why I mention it. And he did say that they are looking at some process to try and do something about that. Try and get one of the much smaller banks to come along and operate in the town, and trying to get the town to, you know, traders and everybody to accept that other bank to come along and open a branch there. So we were waiting on his comments. I've exchanged, I've sent him an email, I've not had anything back yet. But he was up here visiting family, so I don't know when he went back.
So what concerns me about the traders is that there won't be a night safe provision if we're left with the post office. And since the post office shuts 2 half days a week, and bang on 5 o'clock or whenever it is, when the shops shut, when are they going to be able to go? They're all going to be queuing up at 2 minutes to 5 to bank their takings. Because as we know, the shops are pretty vulnerable at the moment. They're attacked fairly regularly. I think it's a terrible situation. Absolutely terrible.
So it's going to have quite an impact on the town. It might be something to put on our agenda with the Trade Association. I did mention it to their chair and one of their committee at last week's meeting. It wasn't discussed there, but maybe it's something we discuss with them, whether they've had any thoughts on it, whether David Webb, being an accountant, whether he can talk to any of the banks and see if he can persuade a bank to come to Oundle if Barclays are not prepared to play ball. Is there anything else on the situation with that?
Just keep an eye on it and make sure.
3508. I'd stuck this item on hoping that I would have had time to go through the figures for the hub and the room usage. I've got some numbers partly completed for the hub, and it looks like we've got between beginning of April and end of November this current year, we've had something like about 51,500, I think it's 51,800, something like that, of income, sales. We've had about 18,500 of purchases. Now, with the markups that we've been looking at from the information that the hub girls are providing for us, we thought the markups would give us a much bigger margin than that of profit. So I think the purchases are probably about 5,000 more than they want to be for those markups. So we've either got something seriously wrong somewhere that we haven't spotted, or we've got stock somehow going missing.
Or a lot of wastage.
Or a lot of wastage. These are really the options. By the time you take into account, I can't off the top of my head remember the staffing figure. I think the staffing figure was about 40,000, including on costs. You got them there, have you?
No, I haven't got them here, but I've got them in there.
Right. It was about 40,000, I think, with on costs for staffing for that period. And, you know, with 51,000 sales and then 18,500 of purchases, before you take into consideration anything else, you're already making a substantial loss.
That's half a library, isn't it? Almost.
Before you come on to things like consumables and all the other costs that we have, which are hub specific, and then before you add on the overheads for Fletton House. So we are really struggling. We need really to get these figures sorted out. It's something else we've got to get together and go through, I think. Get some figures sorted out, because we desperately need to put up prices. And we need to look at all the lines. I don't know whether Claire has got that report finished yet.
I haven't seen it, or I've seen the stock take
Yeah,
that she
she
sent,
sent that
but I
through the
haven't
other day.
seen the other document. No.
That comes through in a form. We're wondering what she uses to produce this Excel spreadsheet, because I've got about 3 different versions of Excel, and none of them will open it.
I don't know if she uses. Does she use
She's using Open Software.
Open Office? Yeah.
Yeah,
So it did. I can open it on mine,
right.
but it just comes up in a sort of simple format. But something did come up saying it was opening an Office document, and so some of the things might go missing.
I don't think they do.
No, it didn't look like it. It looked okay. Have you
Right.
opened it?
Yeah, I can't open it on my phone.
Yeah.
When I open it, it comes up as a zip
Yeah.
document, but I can open it on my
Well, I'll see if I can
Desktop.
save it as an Excel, and I'll send
but
it to
apparently
you.
versions of Excel have got to.
I've just given it me
Oh,
now.
I didn't.
Yeah. Different versions, or old versions, or the versions of Excel have got to have a special translation unit within them, and I think later ones do,
Yeah.
whereas the earlier ones may not.
Yeah,
So-
I didn't have any problem opening it. It was just when I was closing it, it said it was
Yeah.
converting an Office document.
When she sends these cost prices and selling prices through to us, when she's got those completed, then if you can convert that one
Yeah.
to a standard Excel format and send it on to me, then I can have a look at those. But we've certainly got some something that doesn't quite add up there as regards the ratio of sales to purchases, and you know, with the amount of staffing cost, we've got really to manage with less staff. I think we've got to be more efficient.
But something I can go down there 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's hardly anybody there, unless there's a specific function on here.
Yeah,
There's 3 of them, 2 or 3 of them.
But it's difficult, isn't it?
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
You can't
you're,
make people use it at times
No.
when they're actually picking their kids up from school and
no,
can't be on the
no,
premises.
that's right.
But there is an EPOS report there that looks at, it's a rather funny format report, which looks at the takings per hour for the month. So it will look at what you took at 9 till 10 on a Tuesday for all the Tuesdays in the month. And then it will give you what you took between 10 and 11 on all the Tuesdays in the month, and so on. And it's in that form. So you've got to remember that when you get this figure for how much you took, in that month you had 4 Tuesdays or 5 Tuesdays sometimes, and it's a bit, you know, it's a bit messy, and
Could there be
you
anything wrong with that? Could there be anything wrong with the EPOS system, or could it be? Yeah, not.
Well, that's a possibility,
Yeah.
but
To get somebody to look at it.
These wet and dry things and all these other strange headings that you get on the...
well, we want to combine those two.
Yeah.
Headings of wet and dry. That was done for pubs,
Yeah.
really, where wet is your bar sales and dry is your food stuff.
Yeah.
But we've got a mixture of wet and dry. I mean, sometimes coffee is wet and sometimes it's dry. So,
You know, I'm
it's
just thinking how some of that might confuse
yeah,
less experienced workers.
exactly, yeah. I mean, if they've had experience of the pub trade before, they would be thinking that wet is things like we sell soft drinks and alcohol. So they would be putting those on as wet purchases and the other stuff as dry purchases. It's not very warm
It's
here.
freezing.
No,
Yeah.
that's
I'm getting cold. Colder. I don't know why the heating's not working.
Well,
It feels
apologies
like-
for not having had a chance. I've not been particularly well and not been able to get these figures together as quick as I wanted to, otherwise we'd have had quite a lot of numbers to go through tonight. But I think that's as far as we can take that one for the moment, and I'll try and get some figures together with Malcolm to bring to full council. And that brings us on then to the last item, 1736. Any other business for report only? I'll go around the room. Councillor Chesser,
nothing, no.
Councillor Glenn, Councillor Chapel. No, I've nothing. You've nothing?
No.
Right. Well, I'll close the meeting then at, what, 9:03?